Happy Friday and welcome here to another edition of Husker Online Headlines. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple. We are back from Indianapolis, and I can confirm that Steve Sipple did dominate El Toro Mexican restaurant.
You and Robin dominated. I'm just sort of along for the ride, but it was fun and it was great. It was great.
We had a good trip to Indy. Had one hurdle, and there's Mr. Sipple right there enjoying his pineapple mezcal margarita.
No, I just got the lime, Sean.
The lime.
Yeah, I didn't go with pineapple this time.
And that was your only one. I think people have this like, he had one
hammered. No, I don't get hammered because I had a radio show the next day. I do my duties for Sean, obviously, which is stressful enough. But then I have to do a radio show, and I had to get up at 5:30 the next morning.
But we didn't get in until Tuesday night after 10. So we didn't even have time. So Wednesday we get in, and it was a full wall-to-wall Nebraska day, and that's what we're going to get to here on our headline number one.
Yeah, get to
as we start off the show here, as we really put a bow on Big Ten Media Days.
Let's do it.
But headline number one, Matt Rhule leaves no doubt about the confidence he has in this football team. And look, every coach at a conference media days is confident. I mean, you would have thought Indiana was going to win the national championship after you read the comments from their new head coach,
Kurt Signetti.
Thank you. I was going to try to. I didn't want to butcher the last name.
It's not that hard, Sean.
We're still amazed that you got Schlossnagel right on like one attempt.
Yeah, when I get condescending with you about last names, you can fire back.
Good job, Jordan. But Matt Rhule, very confident about this team. It's a great mix of veterans, new additions, and obviously youth. And they have a schedule. I think that's the other key component. They have a schedule that allows them to possibly build to what they want to be by late October and November, where a lot of Nebraska teams over the last 6 years have not had the luxury of really a schedule that allows them to build.
That's Sean Callahan talking. Matt Rhule, and I agree with you, Sean. What Matt Rhule said is, first of all, he's amazing in these settings. He gives you so much material. It was such an easy column to write. He was simply asked, what are your expectations? I mean, what would mean success? And he gave a 5-minute answer. It was great. And he talked and got to this. I guess what I'm saying to you is I expect us to be a really good team. I expect us to be competitive. I expect us to be in the mix in this conference. I mean, that's got to – I mean, I don't know about you, Sean, but that conjures up images of if Nebraska is he talking about in the mix for first place in November? I don't know. It kind of it's provocative. It's a provocative conversation because you don't know exactly what to think. Right?
Yeah, is that God forbid the 12-team playoff.
Yeah. I mean, we know, though, beyond a shadow of a doubt, he does like this team, and he is confident. You're right, though. You're right. I'm glad you said what you did, in fact, that all coaches kind of there should be optimistic right now. They're just right on the cusp of going.
I mean, Lincoln Riley kind of had a Scott Frost 2018 tone where, you better get us now type of mentality with his opening comments.
Right. What I was going to say is they're all on the cusp of going into preseason camp. So they don't want to pour cold water on anything. But Rhule has a way of making you believe. And he did it. He did it in this situation. He even went into the weeds a little bit. I asked him, is some of your optimism just a result of better quarterback play? I mean, I'm just assuming the quarterback play is going to be better because the number actually, Sean, was 135.9 yards per game last year, which was deep in the 126 nationally. 10 touchdown passes, 16 interceptions. It can't get worse. You really can't do worse than that. And he said, no, it's not. He said, no, it's not really that. He said, we're so much different at receiver. And he said, I think people are going to have to defend the run and the pass, no matter who the quarterback is. And I think that's going to make our O-line better.
And they were so limited last year. I think almost we forget when Jeff Sims didn't work out and then he got hurt,
Mm-hmm.
just the pivot they had to make. I mean, they were basically drawing up plays from the Tom Osborne era with Ron Brown.
They literally were.
Just to try to find points.
They literally were. And then, so he goes down against Colorado. Then it was Northern Illinois the next week, right? When the two running backs went down, Gabe Ervin and Ramir Johnson. That was the next week.
Well, and Isaiah Garcia Castaneda goes down.
He went down in the opener. Then Washington, the receiver, goes down. What was his first name?
Marcus
Washington goes down against Illinois.
You almost forget about him.
Right. He was good. He was a downfield.
He was going to possibly be their number one receiver last year.
He goes down. So they're just,
Billy Kemp got hurt too.
Billy Kemp gets hurt. They're losing linemen. They're losing skill players. They're having abysmal quarterback play. And it's a nightmare for Satterfield to the extent where he's telling the UTEP coaches, I'm sorry about that film you got to watch of us. I'm sorry. But I'm sorry you have to watch that stuff. It was I would call it a nightmarish season for Marcus Satterfield. And Sean, I got to tell you, I almost feel bad about some of the criticism I levied on Satterfield last year, even raising the possibility that he would be fired. I feel bad about that when I think about it.
Well, and on top of the fact that they made him the quarterback's coach when that was never the plan.
Right.
And because who Rhule initially maybe wanted in that role, it didn't work out, whoever that coach would have been.
Mm-hmm.
They had to pivot the staff, make Satterfield the QB's coach, and then bring in Bob Wager as the tight ends coach. Well, I mean, none of that worked out last year. And now I think the staff has a much better feel.
I think it does. And again, I go back to Satterfield, Sean. I think when you do that as a media person, you're kind of caught up in everything. It's the heat of the season. I'm not making apologies. I'm not making excuses. I just almost feel bad that when I step back and take the 30,000 foot view, what was he going to do? You know, they were hurting. Now, this year's different. No excuses. They got some dudes. They got enough on that offense, Sean, I think, to be a top 40 offense. I think there's enough there.
The short, controlled passing game and the timing of that, the timing of the screen game, the ability to execute a screen, Dylan Raiola can do those things. I mean, I think they can do more. We still don't know, though, who's going to lead the running game.
No, we don't.
I mean, I think today I would hedge a little bit towards Emmett Johnson. You wonder about Gabe Ervin's hip. That hip injuries. I always go back to as a kid as Bo Jackson.
Yeah, good point.
Those are dangerous for football players.
Yeah, I would probably lean towards Emmett too, but it doesn't.
With a combination of and Ramir is going to have a role.
I think there's a scenario where Ramir Johnson becomes the number one running back. They never really talk about that, and maybe Rhule and Satterfield will watch this video and say, "What is he talking about? He's our change of pace guy." All I'm saying is I've seen enough of Ramir that it wouldn't. I could put him there. Here's why: because he's an older back. He's a
6-year.
He's a 6-year guy. He's small, but he runs hard. Now he will run between the tackles hard. I could see him being that number one guy, but is supplemented, by a guy that carries 7 to 10 times. Keep your eye on Quentin Ives too. I noticed that he's now listed, I think, 6'2", 210 after he was like 6'2", 190. And you've seen him walking around, and you have heard Matt Rhule talk, because Rhule talked to both of them.
Yeah, he's not. Dante Dowdell's the wild card. Like, is he going to be a factor? We don't really know.
I would like to think so, but you're right. It's not. I think a lot of people just say, "What are you talking about? Dowdell could start." No, he's not. He hasn't progressed like that. He's still a young.
He scored
back.
that touchdown in.
He had guys like you chasing him.
It was the threes, like a third string type defense. Now, Mekhi Nelson, they added another running back.
Yes, that's right.
And so that's another guy that will be in camp. But
that's a good point.
All right, lots to keep up on. Before we take it to headline number 2, Husker Online headlines brought to you by Ellerbrock-Norris. They've been helping Nebraska business owners protect their purpose for over 120 years with risk management solutions built for local businesses. Ellerbrock-Norris partners with you on commercial insurance, group benefits, business exit planning, and more. Start thinking long-term with your business and create a risk management strategy to protect it. Are your employee benefit costs going through the roof? Talk to Ellerbrock. Are your workplace injuries skyrocketing your workers' compensation costs? Talk to Ellerbrock. Hoping to retire in the next 10 years and sell the business to family, key employees, or even a friendly competitor, talk to Ellerbrock. Ellerbrock-Norris is helping you protect your purpose, whether it's your business and the employees in it, your life outside of work, or your future retirement goals. Head to ellerbrock.com/HuskerOnline today to get your free risk evaluation. That's ellerbrock-norris.com/HuskerOnline. Thanks again to Ellerbrock-Norris for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online Show. Okay, let's head into headline number 2, Steve Sipple. How do you say Dylan Raiola is a starter without really saying it? Well, Rhule has done just that. Look, we've heard enough, we know enough, and we've seen enough football in Nebraska. Dylan Raiola is going to be the starting quarterback of the Nebraska football team, barring injuries or something unforeseen.
Something unforeseen. He'd have to report to camp, Sean. Like, I think he's listed about 6'3", 225, 220. He'd have to, if he reports to camp at 6'3", 260, and all of a sudden, somehow he's 6'1". He loses height. No, what I'm suggesting is no. I mean, if Dylan reports to camp and acquits himself well, he'll be the starting quarterback. He will do that, by the way. The reason I always speak with confidence about Dylan, you know the family, you know Dylan. You think Dylan's going to back off?
He's in that facility every day.
Yeah, he's not going to back off. I mean, he treats it like a resort. Like, I know this about the way Dylan approaches it. He sees the Nebraska expansive football facility as this like football resort.
It's like a Ritz-Carlton.
Yeah, it's like a Ritz-Carlton. He has all this technology and all this
food.
Thank you. Food, recovery equipment, weights. I mean, grade A, everything. He has all this to better himself and do what? Become an NFL quarterback.
And I'm guessing a line of people there that want to help him.
A line of people that want to help him. And make no mistake, Dylan wants to be an NFL quarterback. And he, God bless him, recognizes that he has that sort of talent. Dylan Raiola is not backing off. I mean, and Sean, you wouldn't say that about every guy you come across. Sometimes you don't know on certain guys. You don't. You know this.
Well, you think about, okay, let's just use a bad example, but Harrison Beck. When he came to Nebraska in 2005, I think at that time you thought it was going to be maybe like a Dylan Raiola now. Mm-hmm. But we learned pretty quickly he wasn't ready to be the starter.
We've seen it a lot.
And thank goodness they had Zach Taylor at that point.
Right. We've seen it a lot, not just quarterbacks. I mean, you see it.
Cody Green I think we thought he was really, really good. And I think you learned he was limited.
Kurt Dukes is a good example. Kurt Dukes.
Not ready.
Back in the day, they needed him to be ready because they had some injuries. He wasn't ready.
Adrian Martinez, you can argue, was really the only other true freshman that was ready.
Right. Adrian came in because he was so.
And we're not talking like Tommy Frazier was obviously ready too, but we're talking like more in the last 20 years.
Adrian's a great example, and he has it's actually an interesting conversation. Adrian has the intangibles that Dylan has, just doesn't have the talent. Adrian's really good too. But think about what I just said.
Well, he had enough talent to be the MVP of the UFL Football League.
I know. Think about what I'm saying though. Adrian's really good. But would you say he possesses the talent that Dylan does?
Not the arm talent.
No way.
And
no, it's just not arm talent. Do you think he has the overall football acumen? You think he reads defenses like Dylan does? Or do you think he did when he got here? Do you think he was as prepared for everything as Dylan is? I don't. And Adrian was well prepared.
And Adrian missed his senior year of high school.
Yeah. But he was, he was modern. He was in that modern age of quarterbacks to get really prepared because they're brought up so early with starting in college in mind.
The training though that Martinez had in high school, I'm just going to go on a limb and say it's nowhere near the level that Dylan Raiola has received the last 4 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you just want to simplify the conversation, Adrian didn't have the luxury of having an uncle who's an offensive line coach, who has been an offensive line coach in the NFL and now is the offensive line coach for Nebraska. And Adrian didn't have the luxury of having a father who played 14 years in the NFL. So as a center. So
Well,
yeah,
and
Dylan's
think about
prepared.
Dylan's high school coaches. He played for John Kitna and Burleson, Texas.
Good point.
Then he went to Chandler, a top national 25 program, and then he went to Buford, Georgia. So he's played for 3 different offenses, 3 different high-level head coach programs. So just what he's seen and had to absorb, there's no other high school player in the country that can say that.
Right.
To go from Dallas to Phoenix to Georgia. And look, you could say, oh, that's not a good. Well, look, he did it.
Oh, yeah, some will use it as a negative, but you can spin that conversation.
No, I mean, I think
positive
it's
way.
actually probably helped his football knowledge to have to learn and pick up systems.
I think the fans are starting to understand that him reading defenses on Saturdays, getting protections right, understanding what's in front of him, that's not going to be a problem. You heard Taglialoa, the elder Taglialoa. I can't say it.
Tungavailoa.
Yeah. You heard his father say that to us in Hawaii.
Galu.
Yeah, Galu. Tungalia. I can't say it. But anyway.
Tungavailoa.
Yeah, thank you. Really frustrating, Sean.
Too many chips and queso at.
No, it wasn't too many chips and queso. But he said, no, Dylan reads really well. So I'm not worried about that.
Well, and just when you see him like rolling out with his eyes down the field, a lot of quarterbacks, when they roll out, they're thinking run or just, I mean, he's looking down the field when he's rolling out, and he can make that. He's got the rare arm talent where when he's kind of on the run, he can still put zip on the ball.
The unknown, while we're talking about Dylan, is how will he respond when he goes out on that field for the Colorado game, and it's a frenzy. I mean, it'll be a frenzy.
And they blitz 7 people at him.
Right. Now, how you don't know. Now, that's one unknown. You don't know how he'll handle the pressure. Or Sean, here's some pressure. We don't think about stuff like this enough. How about Colorado gets up 21 to zip? All right. How about Colorado gets up 17 to zip? And you know how the stadium gets, right? It gets tense. You can hear people talking. You can literally, as a player, hear people in the stands talking. How would he handle that? If Colorado happens to get a jump, and then now there's pressure, real pressure.
When Memorial Stadium's real quiet, you can actually hear like the planes that fly above there with like you're just sitting there and you just
100%.
hear this
100%.
and like that it's so quiet that you can hear the planes that fly above this. Like that's when
great point.
That's the noise when it's really dead in there. You're like, oh God,
yeah.
You can hear the plane even. It's so quiet right now.
Yeah. So how does he respond to that? They're going to be down, Sean, not necessarily against Colorado, but there's going to be games.
Indiana is going to be a good offensive team. Rutgers is going to make it a street fight.
Yeah, when Nebraska's in those street fights, then you find out about
Purdue
that.
On the road. They're going to have good offense.
Yeah.
Illinois is not just going to give it. I mean, those 4 games in the Big Ten to start, they looked favorable, but they're still going to be probably 1-score games.
Thank you for saying that. So
let's not kid ourselves. Every one of these games that Nebraska wins, in most cases in the Big Ten, are usually going to be 1-score games.
I've said it before. I say it often because I've seen it often. That position, it can feel like the world is crashing down all around you on Saturday, and you have to be able to respond. And I don't know how he will. That's the one thing I wonder about.
All right, let's before we go to headline number 3, Husker Online headlines brought to you by Omaha Steaks. And, we've got a great deal going on at Omaha Steaks. They're hotter than fire special. A lot of things already marked down, starting at just $99. And on top of that, you're going to get an additional $10 off anything you do here on the already discounted things here on Omaha Steaks websites. That's chicken, that's steaks, that's side items, you name it. Omaha Steaks has you covered. Remember those filet mignon burgers, Sipple. Oh my gosh, I highly recommend the filet mignon burgers.
Sounds great. Sure.
They were unbelievably good. But we've got a deal. You got to use the promo code. It's HuskerOnline at checkout. That's promo code Huskers with an S. HuskersOnline to get an additional $10 at omahasteaks.com. They've got tons of great specials and deals. Local Nebraska-based company that's now worldwide, ran and operated now by a Husker, Nate Rempe, good friend of mine.
Nate Rempe
lives in Lincoln, and Nate will get you hooked up as a Husker fan. As we're going to give you another $10 off your order with the promo code Huskers Online. Thanks again to Omaha Steaks for sponsoring us here on the HuskerOnline show. Okay, headline 3, Carter Nelson, the big horse, as Stephen M. Sipple likes to say, is a player to watch. And by the way, Carter Nelson just had a birthday party, and I saw he went to Texas Roadhouse with his family, and they put him on the saddle.
Oh, for God's sake.
I retweeted it, Megan, if you could find the clip. Carter Nelson, though, had a birthday this week and got a hell of a lot of praise from Matt Rhule at Big Ten Media Days.
He did. It was, I saw that you wrote, it was maybe the most interesting thing that Rhule said. It definitely got people's attention because he said they're getting him ready to play, which we have said, by the way, that they should do.
Yeah, we're not dumb. And I know you've had a couple people try to steer you off the scent there, and,
Right.
and you've stuck to your guns.
Right. It's not that hard. We have the advantage of being in Hawaii, of having gone to Hawaii.
There's Carter celebrating his birthday at Texas Roadhouse, by the way.
So we have that advantage of having seen him in that.
Look at him on the birthday saddle.
Yeah, I can't. I you know what? I'm afraid to. I have a story on my screen. I don't want to X out because I'm afraid I'll screw up the entire show. But we saw him in that picture in Hawaii was so interesting to you and me because we saw him with 4- and 5-star players. And there were times in those practices, we saw 2 practice days, right? And God bless you for sending us out there because it was so valuable. And part of the value was seeing, wow, Carter looks like one of the better players on the field. And there were times I thought, he looks like the best player on the field. So that's when it hit me. Okay. Then it hit me when Zimmer, Mike, the coach,
Longtime Gristle veteran.
yeah, said, okay, now this kid can play, but he's also got a little mean streak to him. I mean, he caught a pass in the end zone and a guy kind of hit him late. Carter went after him. You need to hear that. That's important.
Do you know what got my attention right away? When he got there late because of the travel issues, but he gets in that first practice and then they do the competitions.
Yeah.
And they had a tug of war.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine like big Polynesian, Samoan players,
Sure.
and he got in there and wanted to go against these guys and win. And he did.
Mm-hmm.
And he was fired up.
That's Carter
as a competitor. The other play in that game when there was an interception,
mm-hmm.
and he ran the guy down.
It was amazing to watch him cover that much ground, the strides and how fast he is, and then pulling the guy down. Yeah, that was illuminating. Now, what Rhule said is this. When I recruited him, I said, hey, we're going to create a special position for you. He said, I'm proud that we followed through on that because he is a difference maker. This is Rhule talking, not Sipple, not Sean.
And he used the word upgrade.
Yeah, he said how much he knows about the offense is going to dictate how much he plays. But he's playing receiver. He can come into the box and be like a tight end, but we can also split him outside and win. I think he'll play a ton of football for us. And he's talking this year. See, I know people get so skeptical of us always, talking sunshine and all that. But I don't do that about every player. I think they have something here.
And I still always found it bizarre. People in the surrounding area of Ainsworth, there were a lot of critics of Carter Nelson.
It's really strange.
And,
strange.
I have family in that part of the state. And, we had a family reunion. And I had relatives debating me about him. And I'm like, look, guys, I don't think you understand what you have right now. Like Carter Nelson went down to Alabama's camp, did a live workout, ran a 4.5 240.
And then what happened?
And then Nick Saban's like, your offer is greenlit. You can commit right now if you want.
Nick Saban would call him.
Yes. Kirby Smart.
Freeman, that Notre Dame coach, would fly in that little airport, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think
it was a battle for him too, by the way. Who was it a battle with? Who'd Nebraska have to
Georgia.
Who'd Nebraska have to
Notre Dame.
Georgia and Notre Dame. I'm not surprised.
No.
I saw it because I'm not surprised because of what I saw in Hawaii. That's why I'm not surprised.
I've never in my time doing this job or anytime seen an athlete that in 1 year won 8 different track events, 8 individual events he entered this year and won all 8 of them.
Yeah. And we can cool it a little bit. And I'm sure people are literally saying, okay, you guys need to tone it down a little bit. Okay, I will. I'm not going to say he's going to be an All-American this year.
But he's been working with their top groups this summer. That's what we were told.
He's working with
the
their
black.
top
They
groups.
call it the black group.
And all I'm going to say about Carter, I don't want to put pressure on him. I don't think we should, but he'll catch passes in big games that mean something this year. That's what I think. He's going to catch passes in situations where they need him, and he'll be good. He's the other thing we should mention, he's lifting weights for the first time. He was as good as he was without lifting weights. Now he's in a weight regimen.
Well, he took his team to the state finals in basketball, and that was with, just being an athlete. I mean, that they made it all the way to the championship game. He won the long jump. He was runner-up in the 200. I mean,
you're right, Sean. I want to say one more thing. It gets to the essence of why we love sports. What I like is identifying players that have the kind of greatness that you will pay to see, that you will gladly pay to see. Or if not that, then the second part is players that have that sort of potential. That's where he fits. But how many players since Amir Abdullah have Nebraska had that you would say he's the price of admission alone? The answer to that question is not nearly enough, and maybe not any.
Wandale Robinson was on that path.
Yes, he was.
But they misused him.
Great. No, Sean, that's a great name. He was on that path.
He was on that path. He won them the Northwestern game in 2019 by himself.
He was on that path. He didn't get there.
I mean, he led the SEC in receiving.
I'm talking about guys like Grant Wistrom. I'm talking about guys like Amon Green, like Lawrence Phillips, like Tommy.
But Randy Gregory almost.
Randy Gregory is a pretty good example.
Levante David.
Almost worth the price of admission alone. That's how you win championships. I mean, that's that big receiver Ohio State had, that he was worth the price of admission to watch.
Marvin Harrison Jr.
Those are the guys you need. You need a couple of those guys. And I'm not saying Carter Nelson is that guy, but I have a suspicion that he could become that guy.
All right, let's go to headline number 4. But before we do that, Husker on the headlines brought to you by Manscaped. Tons of great products at Manscaped. Particularly, they got, if you have a beard and you just want to take care of your skin on your face, they've got tons of great beard and face products. Check it out. Beard shampoo, beard conditioner, you name it, clippers. And then also lots of great shampoos and conditioners and body washes. And we've got a great special right now for our Husker Online viewers and listeners at manscaped.com. We're going to give you 20% off. Use the promo code Husker. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. But you have to use the promo code Husker. It's the perfect way, perfect products to take care of yourself at manscaped.com, promo code Husker. Okay, big recruiting weekend for Nebraska. Headline number 4. And Matt Rhule teased its importance because of just some of the recruiting elements involved, and particularly over the next few days, starting here on Friday, Nebraska will host David Sanders Jr., the number 1 offensive lineman in the country, the number 2 overall player in the country. To my knowledge, he is the highest ranked player Nebraska's ever had on campus in recruiting history.
Well, hello.
It's hard to be higher than that because,
and he's got his final list is Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee.
And I'm told it's really Nebraska and Tennessee at this point. Tennessee is the leader, percent, but Nebraska has gotten back in. Give Dylan Raiola a lot of credit. Give 1890 Nebraska and probably what they've had to do. Because look, this is a player that is probably over $1 million.
Okay, what you're saying is fascinating. You think it's Tennessee and Nebraska?
I've had good conversations with our colleagues at volquest.com who have as good of a feel on this as anybody. And yeah, their feeling there is Nebraska is the competition.
Here's my concern. Tennessee will do whatever it has to do to get David Sanders. Whatever it has to do. No scruples.
Well, Nebraska boosters now with the new strings attached with NIL where you can get the priority points now. You could possibly get a tax write-off. I do think those things will help. But yeah, this is going to be a player. But I also think if you're thinking a step ahead by 2025, guess what you have now? An additional $22 million.
Right.
So I think you have to be aggressive because Nebraska doesn't have a lot of players that would command this kind of money on their roster. Dylan Raiola is one of them.
Mm-hmm. So for sure. And now you go back to Matt Rhule's comments in Indianapolis, where it was really striking near the end. I think it was near the end of his side session with the group of reporters, where he said, we are strong as far as our collective goes, but we still have a ways to go. And what schools did he mention? Ohio State,
Oregon,
and LSU. We're not where they're at. Ohio State's roster, I think they've paid $20 million. Okay, $20 million to its players. Nebraska, I imagine half that, maybe
over 10. I mean, they're in that 10 to 15. It's growing by the day. I mean, that's the thing,
right?
But look,
but Matt said they're not.
Matt Rhule,
Matt Rhule said they're not where they need to be. He said that. I am not positive, but I got to think with Sanders in mind.
And Michael Terry. So Michael Terry, the 5-star athlete, another version of the Carter Nelson, a guy that you'd almost create a position for. He is coming this week too. So they are hosting 2 5-stars here over this 7-day period where you're allowed to have unofficials on campus. And don't kid yourself. They are not here if it wasn't for the NIL potential at Nebraska.
And then, right. And then you have Isaiah Mosey coming in at some point, right?
And his father here. And you have to feel good about Mosey.
Okay.
At this point.
Mosey's interesting, Sean. I told you I filmed him up. He's an interesting player because his Oregon offers to play receiver, but you see him, Sean, I'm lapsing into my Mel Kiper here, so pay attention. You see him line up at running back. So what does he do really well after the catch? He runs the ball like a running back after the catch. He's a very interesting player to me. He's not that big, but he is you could play him at running back if you wanted to, I think. Maybe the size dictates that he plays receiver, but that's interesting. The whole picture's interesting right now. I think what you get from some fans is skepticism. Oh, okay, it's between Nebraska and Tennessee. Tennessee will get him. You get some of that, right?
Well, then for 2026, there's going to be big visitors here too. I mean, so you've got these 25 guys, but Brandon Arrington from California is the number 20th overall player in the top 100. He's going to be here as an athlete this weekend.
Where do you think he'll play? Where do you think he'd play?
6'1", 180. So I don't know. I mean, he can play a lot of positions at that size level. You've got Darius Yates, the number 45 player in the country that's going to be here. Keenan Harris, the number 267th. And you go down the line. This is an outstanding weekend. Dayton Raiola is going to be on campus. Hudson Parliament, the top player arguably in South Dakota for 2026. So they have maximized this weekend or these few days. Next year, this July week that we're seeing now won't exist. This is the last year on the calendar to do this. And Nebraska went all in to bring in. I mean, there's going to be over 30 high-profile guys here this weekend.
Wow.
Think about that.
I am thinking about it. That's incredible. And
then you won't be able to have visitors in August. August is kind of a dead period. It's a dead period.
Well, it closes down because camp starts.
And then you can start to have recruits come back in September for games.
God, those coaches are amazing. I mean, they got to be on this weekend. They got to be on because those guys are here. And then next week they got to be on because camp runs.
Then during the season, you get your 33 days that you can use for each coach out. That's a day per coach. So those 33 days. And when do you put Matt Rhule out on the road? How often do you do it?
Right.
I mean, you have bye weeks, but Matt Rhule could theoretically only be out on the road a couple of days during the season, probably not much more than that, maybe 2 to 4 days tops, depending on how much you want him out.
Wow.
So the strategy, but this weekend, when you go back and look, if things go right, we'll go back to this weekend because Michael Terry, Mosey, and then Sanders, they would be the 3 highest ranked guys. If
you know what, God, if you could just get 2. I mean, I don't want to. I don't know. I shouldn't set limits, but God, if you could get 2 of those guys.
Well, Mosey, I would give it. I'm going to put a 60% likelihood on Mosey.
Okay.
I mean, I would hope that if his dad is. By the way, Matt Rhule did say Mosey's father will be coaching receivers. That was a pretty good tip.
Well, and let's just be very honest. It really helps when you're recruiting a player like Isaiah Mosey that you can say we have Dylan Raiola at quarterback, right? Really helps. And I think to a certain extent, Daniel Kalen. I mean, your quarterback room's in good shape, and Heinrich's there, probably be number 2. I mean, but Dylan, I know we talk about him a lot in glowing terms, but the fact is he's kind of earned it already. He was a 5-star player, and we saw him in the spring come ready, Sean. We did. We didn't. Did you ever hear anything like, we've never had the conversation with anybody, including amongst ourselves, ooh, I don't know, Dylan's not having a good week, or Dylan's looks like he's kind of sliding back. You never hear anything like that.
Well, think about when,
in fact, you heard
Adrian Martinez came as a freshman, his first spring, he was coming off shoulder. You never really, you thought, well, Jebbia could maybe still win this thing.
Right.
Like you weren't handing anything to Martinez.
No. And,
I think Frost's offense was so quarterback friendly that it allowed Martinez to kind of get going early in his career.
Yeah.
Where Raiola, I think we've known from the minute he got here.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
He's different.
Yeah. And it's not, I hope people understand when we come on and do these videos that we're not guessing on this stuff. We talk to the principals. We talk on the record and off the record with people that are directly involved.
Not third hand.
Not second hand. I mean,
first hand.
Standing in Belton talking to the coaches. The defensive coaches, they say they got lit up a little bit by Dylan. I mean,
there were clips on film where they could have been in the perfect coverage, and Raiola could still make the throw over it. And Tony White would just tell people watching the film with him, "What do you do here?
Right?
Like, what can you even do about this?"
Right.
Like,
now this is where we got to catch ourselves. It's not. I told you earlier, and I mean it. I don't know how he'll respond in all situations. He's still a freshman. The heat is the heat. God, I mean, just if people could just listen to us talk about what's going on right now with the recruits, season coming, we get back from Big Ten Media Days. This is all pretty intense, and he's a kid. I mean, he's a kid. So can he handle the inherent intensity that comes with that job? It's huge. It's a huge job to be the quarterback at Nebraska. Gigantic job. You've seen it, and you've seen some guys crumble a little bit under that weight. So we'll see how he handles it.
All right.
I think he'll be fine, but it's a lot. It's a lot.
All right. Before we go to headline number 5, a reminder, if you're not a member of HuskerOnline.com, we got a great special. This will get you going into fall camp and even the first month of the season. We're giving you 2 months, Steve Sipple, for $1 with the promo code NU1. That's the best deal you're going to get. Don't tell anyone. It's just for our YouTube people only.
Yeah.
And our podcast listeners, 2 months for $1. The promo code is NU1. Headline number 5. Okay, let's go back to Indy. Final takeaways just from the event in general. I'll say this. This was the first year the Big Ten has moved this thing to 3 days because it's really hard to do a 2-day event with 18 teams.
What'd you think?
And, I felt like when it was a 2-day event, all the media would stay for both days. When they've spread this thing out to 3 days, it kind of spaced out the media where the crowd, it was, I remember back in the day, you couldn't even get seats some years.
Good point.
And it was like, pick your table this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. The dynamic is sort of hard to get your arms around. I think
we got done what needed to get done, but I don't think a lot of people go to cover all 3 days anymore.
They don't do that. It seems like let's just say this. There's fewer Nebraska media.
We saw it was the fewest number of Radio Row. Your station was there, and then the Hail Varsity crew. Those were the 2 Nebraska radios there, right?
There might have been someone else.
No, I think it was the Hail Varsity, Herdat crew, and you guys. So there were times back in the day where there could be 6 radios from Nebraska.
Right. It was incredible how much Nebraska radio presence was there, and now, this year it wasn't. So I don't know what exactly.
It's expensive to get to Indy.
It's expensive to get to Indy. It's 3 days. I mean, now I will say this. I told you this yesterday. You were working hard in your usual Sean Callahan mode, moving a zillion miles an hour. But I said to you, as long as we can go to this event, we have to go because the content you receive is incredible. You just get a ton of content. I mean, think about what we got just from Matt Rhule. We still have stuff to get out. I got a column coming, just talking to Isaac Gifford. It was great. I mean, you get so much insight and if you're not there, I just feel kind of bad. Like, man, we missed a lot of insight.
And the other thing I'd say is it started at 11 each day, but if you want to actually getting there early, you get a lot of things done early.
Yeah, you can.
I mean, there's a lot of people just standing around, or like our colleague Steve Wilfong from On3 Sports, the national recruiting director. I mean, he was there 8 o'clock in the morning. I mean, he's talking to every head coach individually.
Wilfong
is
aggressive. He's aggressive.
Yeah, that picture of Wilfong, Pete Nakos, and Andy Staples that were there with us from On3, man, those guys are big time. They did a great job out there.
They did. And we, I mean, it was good for us. And I just think it's incredibly important to be there. So now what happened was, okay, so the other part of it that's interesting, when you have all those people together and you're in one spot, people are inherently interesting, and interesting stuff's going to happen. And I'll never forget that Deshaun Foster scene, the UCLA head coach.
I was watching it live, and I'm like, what is going on here? Like,
we were both watching it live. And I will tell you this. I want to say this because I haven't said it yet. I was intent on watching Deshaun Foster because I wondered what he'd be like. Here's the new UCLA head coach who's never been a head coach. He was a running backs coach. And this is a big room. I mean, it's a stadium. You know, he's on a football field and he's addressing hundreds of reporters. How's this going to look? And it's and I would say a historic day.
And he was the first coach of the day.
Yeah, he's not signing the Declaration of Independence. It's not like that, but it's still pretty historic. And he froze. He just froze. I think he kind of made a joke that didn't go over. He said, UCLA, you may not know who we are. We're from LA. Nobody laughed. And I think that's my theory, is that nobody reacted.
And he went off the rails at that point.
Well, he just kind of froze. And then that was it. And it kind of, it was a scene that made you very uncomfortable, right? You were like, what's he doing?
Now, let me ask you this.
What?
Tony White was up for that job. I mean, Tony White would have been.
Okay. Tony White would have been great at the podium.
Right. And he's got more experience as a coach, and he's alumnus.
As a head coach, though.
Not as Deshaun Foster, but a head coach?
No.
But that's an example of why the transfer portal, they were so afraid to lose their roster that they promoted him.
Good point.
But Tony White, when you look at it now, Tony White would have done a fine job at UCLA.
Okay, now
he got the opportunity.
Then it opens up that conversation that, by the way, Deshaun Foster addressed subsequent of his freeze up. He said, I'm paraphrasing Deshaun Foster, Sean, but he told reporters, look, there's been a lot of guys that were great at the podium, but can they coach? It's a good point. I am not judging Deshaun Foster on this one incident because it is one example. Now, he failed in that situation, but there's a lot of other leadership situations that he's in that he thrives in, or he wouldn't have that job. He failed in one instance. That's it. I'm not judging him as a head coach based on that.
But, it reminds you a little bit of what Scott Frost did a couple of years ago when he didn't do an opening statement at all.
Different dynamic, right? It wasn't opening a new era of the Big Ten. And he had spoken to the media on a side session. And I think Frost's mindset was, I just talked to these guys in a side session. Do I need to make this elaborate opening statement? And Frost obviously felt like he didn't, but man, he got taken to task for not doing it.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, that was the topic of a lot of people's coverage that day.
It was much discussed. So yeah. So I mean, I say this, we bring this up in part because I think it's interesting when you go to these things, because things like that happen where you think, oh, come on, it's just a media days. There's nothing going to happen. Nobody ever says anything. Be careful with that. I mean, things do get said sometimes, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm trying to think the other thing. PJ Fleck, he gave a 15-minute opening statement.
15 minutes. Fickle, I think, went 13 minutes with his opening statement.
And the made-for-TV part, it's always kind of odd to me because the key people never ask their questions on those things, and it's generally like,
what are you talking about?
So when they're on that part that you're talking about now,
the big podium,
the big podium that's on television, a lot of times what you have, I'm saving it for the side.
Absolutely. But I am kind of thankful for those people, those reporters who ask those questions, because somebody's got to do it. Or they won't.
It's the same 4 or 5 people that usually aren't from like notable outlets.
Right.
And they're trying to get their outlet some recognition on television. And that's usually what that. And when I was a younger reporter, I was like, I got to ask a question on the podium.
Me too.
Now I don't even think about doing that. I wait till the side, and I want to get more in a true rhythm, not some sort of. And then somebody said it best. He's like, a lot of people don't want to ask those questions on TV because if you fumble something or did something wrong, you get taken to task on social media.
You get taken to task on social media. And then also when you do that, everybody gets it. I mean, you ask a great question, you think it's a great question, you get a great answer. Well, it's not your property, it's everybody's property. Whereas if you pull someone aside during the course of a day, it might be not exclusively your property. There might be a few other reporters there, but it's not everybody's property. So yeah. But again, I go back to, I'm glad there's still people willing to ask those questions at the main podium, because somebody's got to do it.
Another interesting thing I learned about the new Big Ten with 18 teams.
What's that?
They have not set the tiebreakers yet for the championship game.
They haven't?
No. And I had a user on HuskerOnline message me like, how come nobody in the media has talked about what? And well, he motivated me to get an answer. And I found out that they are still in discussion along with the SEC how to determine what the tiebreakers will be on who goes to the championship game, because it's very likely that you're going to have some sort of 8-1 or 7-2 tiebreaker.
Absolutely.
That head-to-head may not settle it.
Absolutely.
And so what will the tiebreaker be? Will it be,
that's critical,
after head-to-head, will they just go right to the playoff rankings?
I don't know, but that is critical.
I think you have to, if head-to-head is not an option, I almost think the point of that game should be to stage the 2 highest ranked teams.
Are you sure you want to go to arbitrary ranking?
The committee rankings.
Yeah, I guess.
Because that's what the playoff's about.
Oh, yeah. I'd have to look at it closer.
But we don't know. So that will obviously get settled here very soon, because you can't kick the season off without knowing how the championship.
No, you can't. No, that needs to happen before the season. Right. Yeah.
And I asked our friend Scott Dockerman, who does a great job covering the Big Ten angles from The Athletic. And he said, he goes, I just wrote a story about this with Tony Petiti. They are actually working with the SEC on figuring out the tiebreakers for both leagues. Okay. So the SEC and the Big Ten are kind of working together because they're both in the same boat.
Thank you for bringing that up. That is fascinating.
No divisions.
I know. You're exactly right. You're going to need a tiebreaker.
And head-to-head may not be there.
Right.
Like, okay, guess who doesn't play one of the top 5 teams in the league this year? Rutgers.
Wow.
Rutgers has the best schedule of anybody.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're not going to finish 7-2 though.
But what if Rutgers?
I get you.
Well, who look at their schedule though? Who's going to beat them?
Take a look at it. We got time.
Yeah. You look at.
We got time. You got.
But like Rutgers, if they just pull a rabbit out of their hat, okay, they have Washington, possible win, Nebraska, Wisconsin, UCLA, at USC, Minnesota, Maryland, Illinois, Michigan State.
Yeah, they could do that.
Like if
there's a close games,
if there's a 7-2 tiebreaker, Rutgers could be in that discussion.
Would be
nightmare,
wild.
And then, like, what if you had your tiebreakers wrong and they just didn't make sense, and somehow Rutgers got in the championship game, and they didn't have to play the top 5 teams?
Petiti would be in trouble.
So, like, the top 5 teams we're talking about, they don't play Ohio State, they don't play Michigan, they don't play Penn State, they don't play Iowa, they don't play Oregon.
Yeah.
So they don't play any of those 5 teams that are in the preseason top 5. What if Rutgers somehow gets to 7-2?
They better keep Rutgers in mind in that
I think that's a real. That's a thing that you got to look at.
You have to look at all of that stuff.
That's why I believe the playoff ranking after head-to-head. Well, it wouldn't surprise me if they go right to that.
Yeah, those guys, those people that are making those decisions have to be like a special teams coach or a coordinator in general, where half the job is just accounting for things that could go wrong. And you just identified something that could go wrong. It's very unlikely, but coaches have to prepare for things that are unlikely a lot.
Well, Rutgers,
they have to prepare for stuff that will probably never happen, but they still got to prepare for it. Like a like a fire drill kick to win a game where they don't have any time on the clock and you got to rush out there. Never happens.
A Hail Mary play.
Yeah, hardly ever happens. But you got to, if it happens, you better be prepared or you'll look like an idiot. If Rutgers goes 7-2 and gets in the championship game because the tiebreakers fouled up, you look like an idiot. And you could lose your job over it.
Well, and if Rutgers played any of the top 5, if Rutgers played the perceived top 5 teams, it's a different conversation, but they're not playing one of them.
Wow.
And they open with Howard and Akron, win-win.
Yeah.
And then they go to Virginia Tech. That's a big game for them. If they got to 3-0, then they beat Washington, they're 4-0. And then they come to Lincoln. They could be 4-0 coming to Lincoln.
There's a danger right now, Sean, that people are going to say, you guys are losing your minds talking about Rutgers like this.
But they have a schedule. That's the key.
Mm-hmm.
That could screw everything. I mean, if you're trying to come up with tiebreakers, you have to look at all these scenarios.
I agree. I don't disagree.
Because the head-to-head is not going to be there in all situations. And in this situation, it may not be there in one. Like, what if the team's in play and they haven't played one of them?
I know. That's a trouble if you don't have the correct tiebreaker.
So that's something to watch. All right. Well, we'll have full coverage, Steve Sipple, of the recruiting weekend. Brian Munson is gearing up for a lot of work here.
And I'm going to Wichita of all places.
Oh, yeah. And you'll be in Wichita at the Kansas Cornhuskers event.
Headed down there tomorrow, Saturday. So I kind of feel guilty with everything going on. But
so you're leaving in the morning?
Yeah, you have to. Yeah.
What time is it? 4:00 event?
I think so. I got to look at the information today, like right after this show. But yeah, 4:00.
We'll say hello. Great people down in Wichita. I've done that event for those folks many times over the years. Dale, who runs it down there, does a great job, and you'll get to meet all the great guys.
They have a taco bar, Sean. It's a taco bar.
Soul.
I know. I'm looking forward to it.
Enjoy that drive down 81.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, make sure you're on HuskerOnline.com again. 2 months of access for $1. Promo code NU1. For Steve Sipple, I'm Sean Callahan signing off here for another edition of Husker Online Headlines.